Hello, my name is Brian Cranston, 38 years old, living in Springfield, Illinois, a small city with tree-lined streets shaded by maple trees and peaceful neighborhoods that burst into vibrant shades of gold and red every autumn. My life is nothing extraordinary, much like millions of other men in this vast country. I work as an accountant for a small insurance company, earning enough to cover living expenses and support my family, but never enough to dream of luxurious vacations or a shiny new car. Every morning I wake up at 6, brew coffee, take my son to school, and dive into work with a pile of dry numbers. But I don't complain. A simple life, I think, is its own kind of happiness. My family is small, just the three of us. Me, my wife, Emily, and our 8-year-old son, Ethan. Emily is beautiful and sharp-witted, the woman who took my breath away at first sight 10 years ago. She works part-time at an upscale hair salon where wealthy clients happily spend hundreds of dollars just to trim a few locks. Ethan is like me, a quiet boy who loves reading books about dinosaurs and asking questions that leave me scratching my head. He's my light. The reason I wake up each day with a bit of hope, even if the busyness of life sometimes makes me forget that. We live in a modest 2-bedroom house in the suburbs of Springfield. The house isn't big, but it's cozy enough with a small backyard where Ethan loves to play basketball. I've been paying off the mortgage for 7 years, scrimping and saving every month. Emily isn't too fond of the house. She dreams of a mansion in a fancier neighborhood, but I just smile and tell her we're doing fine as is. Maybe I was wrong to think everything was okay. Besides my little family, there's another important person in my life, my mother. She lives alone in Decatur, about an hour's drive from Springfield. After my father passed away from a heart attack 5 years ago, my mother seemed to age a decade overnight. She has chronic heart failure, requiring regular medication and frequent doctor visits. As her only son, taking care of her is something I never question. Each month I send her money to cover electricity, water, and medication, and I occasionally drive over to visit, bringing food or fixing small things around her house. My mother is a strong woman, but I know she's lonely. Sitting with her, listening to her stories of the past warms my heart but also weighs it down. I just want her to stay healthy and live long enough for Ethan to grow up with his grandmother by his side. My life has gone on like this, steady and uneventful, until the first cracks began to appear. I didn't notice them at first. Maybe I was too busy, or maybe I just didn't want to face the truth. I don't remember exactly when Emily first complained about me sending money to my mother. It might have been one evening over a year ago, after I transferred $300 to her to cover plumbing repairs. Emily was sitting at the dining table scrolling through her phone when she suddenly looked up, her voice sharp and cold. "You sent money to your mom again? Brian, do you know how much the electric bill went up this month?" I was taken aback but tried to keep my tone gentle. "Mom needed the money to fix the pipes, Em. Her house is old. If it's not fixed, the floor will flood." She frowned and tossed her phone onto the table. Your mom, always your mom. Do you ever think about your son? Ethan needs new clothes, needs to join basketball classes. Do you think you're some kind of unlimited bank?" I tried to explain. "Em, I know we're not flush with cash, but Mom only has me. I can't abandon her." I hesitated, then continued, my voice softer. "Maybe you could cut back on shopping a bit. That handbag you bought last week, it was nearly $800. If we save a little, things would be easier." My words were like pouring gasoline on a fire. Emily practically shouted, "You dare say I'm wasteful? You think I don't deserve anything nice? Look at my friends. Their husbands buy them Gucci bags, new cars, and you? All you care about is your mom." I tried to explain that my mother had no one else. My father was gone. Our relatives lived far away, and she didn't want to live with us because she feared being a burden. But Emily didn't want to hear it. She turned away, leaving me standing there, staring at the floor, feeling like I'd done something wrong. Our arguments grew more frequent. She often called me selfish, saying I only thought about my mother and not my wife and son. Her words cut deep, making my heart bleed. I love Emily. I love Ethan, and I thought I was doing everything to keep this family at peace. But the cracks in our marriage were growing, and I didn't know how to mend them. Every time I sent money to my mother, whether it was $200 for medication or $50 for the electric bill, Emily found a way to pick a fight. She kept comparing me to other men who, in her eyes, knew how to take care of their wives. I, on the other hand, tried to gently suggest she live more frugally, cut back on spa visits, dining out, and unnecessary luxuries. But Emily wouldn't listen. She'd glare at me, her voice icy. "Don't tell me how to live, Brian. I work and I have the right to spend my money. If you want to take care of your mom, don't drag this family down with you." Her words stabbed like knives. I love Emily, I love Ethan, and I thought I was doing my best to keep everything balanced. But with every argument, I felt like I was losing. One weekend, I drove to Decatur to visit my mother. I brought some groceries and a new bottle of medication prescribed by her doctor. When I stepped into her small house, she was sitting by the window, her gaze distant as she looked out at the quiet street. She turned to me, a faint smile on her lips. "Brian, you're here. Where are Emily and Ethan today?" I forced a smile, hiding the heaviness in my heart. "Emily's busy, Mom. She's working at the salon this weekend." I knew my mother was perceptive enough to sense the truth, but she didn't press further. Her eyes, deep and full of compassion, seemed to see through the cracks I was trying to hide. During dinner, she placed a plate of mashed potatoes in front of me, her voice gentle but firm. "Brian, you don't need to send me money anymore. I can manage. You have a family, you have Ethan. I don't want you to struggle because of me." I shook my head and took her hand, her frail, wrinkled hand. "Mom, I'm your son. Taking care of you is my duty. I won't let you go without." My voice was firm, but inside I felt a wave of helplessness. I knew she worried about me, but I couldn't abandon her, couldn't leave her to face illness and old age alone. Driving back to Springfield that night, my heart was heavy. My mother understood me, but Emily didn't. I felt caught on a tightrope, trying to hold both ends together, unsure when they might snap. Deep down, I sensed a storm was coming, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to face it. Winter came early to Springfield that year, bringing biting winds that whistled through the windows of our small house. I sat at the kitchen table reviewing bills and calculating next month's expenses, my heart heavy as if weighed down by a stone. My paycheck, barely warm in my pocket, was already stretched thin. Mortgage payments, Ethan's school fees, utility bills, and the money I quietly sent to my mother. Emily hadn't changed. She just bought a new pair of shoes, costing over $400, and when I asked about it, she merely shrugged. "I deserve to treat myself, Brian. Don't manage me like you manage your spreadsheets." I didn't respond, just turned away, trying to quell the smoldering anger inside me. Then one morning, the phone rang while I was brewing coffee. It was my mother's doctor, his voice low and urgent. "Brian, your mother's been admitted to the hospital. Her heart failure has worsened, and she needs immediate intensive care. You should come soon." My blood ran cold. I quickly requested time off work, texted Emily that I had to go to Decatur immediately, and rushed to the car, my mind reeling with images of my mother lying frail and alone in a hospital bed. When I arrived at the hospital in Decatur, my mother was in the ICU, her face pale, her eyes barely open. The steady beeping of the heart monitor was a constant reminder that her time was slipping away. I held her hand, her thin, cold fingers in mine, and fought back tears. "Mom, I'm here. You'll be okay," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. The doctor pulled me aside and explained that my mother needed to be transferred to a better hospital in Springfield, one with advanced equipment and a specialized cardiology team. But the cost of treatment, he said, would be steep, potentially tens of thousands of dollars, not including medication and an extended hospital stay. I nodded, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I knew I didn't have much money, but I also knew I couldn't leave her here, where her chances of survival hung by a thread. That evening, I returned home, my mind a tangled mess. Emily was in the living room scrolling through her phone, not looking up as I walked in. I sat across from her, taking a deep breath before speaking. Mom's really sick. She needs to be transferred to Springfield for treatment. It's going to be expensive, but I have to take care of her. Emily looked up, her eyes narrowing, her voice like ice. Expensive? How much, Brian? Where are you going to get the money? We're still paying off the house, or have you forgotten? Are you going to let your son go hungry? I tried to stay calm, though my heart was pounding. I'll figure it out, Emily. I'll work overtime, borrow money, or sell the car, but Mom, she only has me. I can't abandon her. She shot up, her voice rising to a near scream. Can't abandon her? What about me, Brian? What about Ethan? You always put your mother first. Do you know what I've sacrificed to live with you? I deserve better than this. She pointed at me, her face flushed with anger. If you spend a single dime on your mother, I'll divorce you. I'll take Ethan and make sure you're left with nothing. Her words struck me like a knife to the heart. I looked into the eyes of the woman I once loved, now filled with bitterness and selfishness. I wanted to yell, to tell her she didn't understand that I was trying to hold everything together. But I stayed silent, stood up, and went to Ethan's room. He was curled up in bed, clutching his dinosaur book. I sat beside him, stroking his hair, and promised myself I wouldn't let this family fall apart. But deep down, I knew I couldn't abandon my mother. The next morning, I made my decision. I called the hospital in Springfield to arrange my mother's transfer. I took a week off work, withdrew the little savings I had left in my personal account, and prepared for the tough days ahead. When I told Emily my decision, she said nothing. She just looked at me, her eyes cold as stone, then turned away. That evening, when I returned from the hospital, the house was eerily silent. Emily was gone. On the kitchen table was a note in her handwriting. I'm leaving. Don't look for me, I'll send divorce papers soon. I stood there, the note trembling in my hand. I checked our joint account. It was empty. Emily had withdrawn every cent I'd saved over the years, leaving just a few $100s in my personal account. I sank into a chair, my mind blank, feeling as though the world had collapsed around me. Ethan ran out, hugging me, his voice filled with worry. Dad, where's Mom? Where did she go? I pulled him close, fighting back tears. Mom's got some things to take care of, buddy. Don't worry, I'm here. But inside, I knew everything had changed forever. Emily hadn't just left. She'd taken my trust and hope with her. But I had no time to grieve. My mother was in the hospital, and Ethan needed me more than ever. I stood up, wiped my eyes, and told myself I had to be strong. Not for me, but for my mother and my son. The next day, I transferred my mother to St. John's Hospital in Springfield, where the best cardiology team in the region worked. Each day, I drove from home to the hospital, carrying a bag of snacks for my mother and a few dinosaur books for Ethan. Since Emily had drained our joint account, I had to use the little money left in my personal account to cover the initial hospital fees. The doctor said my mother needed a stent procedure to improve blood flow, but even with insurance, the cost was staggering. I took on overtime at night, doing remote data entry for the company, and even picked up a part-time weekend job at an auto repair shop near home. Every dollar I earned went to my mother and Ethan, but I didn't complain. I couldn't let my mother see me weak, and I didn't want Ethan to think his father was breaking down. Ethan, my little boy, became the small shadow always by my side. With Emily gone, I had no one to watch him, so I brought him to the hospital with me. At first, he was confused, constantly asking, Dad, where's Mom? When is she coming back? I just hugged him, saying that Mom needed some time and that I'd always be there for him. I wasn't sure if he understood, but his clear, innocent eyes gave me strength. In the hospital, I set up a small corner in the waiting area for Ethan to do his homework or read. He was remarkably well-behaved, never fussing, quietly drawing dinosaurs on paper or asking about his grandmother. Will Grandma get better, Dad? He asked, his young voice full of worry. I smiled, though my heart ached. She'll be fine, buddy. I'll do everything to make sure she gets better. My mother, despite her frailty, noticed how busy I was. One afternoon, as I peeled an apple for her, she took my hand, her eyes full of sorrow. Brian, you're working too hard. I see you bringing Ethan here. Where's Emily? Can't she take care of him? Her voice was weak, but I knew she was trying to uncover the truth. I looked down, avoiding her gaze. Emily, she's busy, Mom. I can handle it. I didn't want her to worry, didn't want her to know that the daughter-in-law she once cherished had left, abandoning me and Ethan in an empty house. She looked at me, her eyes piercing through to my soul. She didn't press further, but I knew she understood. She squeezed my hand lightly, her voice trembling. You're the most devoted son a mother could have. I don't want you to suffer because of me. I'll leave a gift worthy of you and Ethan, my boy. I was puzzled, not understanding what she meant. What gift, Mom? You getting better is the greatest gift I could ask for. I smiled, trying to lighten the mood, but she only gave a faint smile, her eyes holding a secret I couldn't yet grasp. The days that followed were a relentless cycle. Mornings, I dropped Ethan off at school, then rushed to the hospital to be with my mother. In the afternoons, I picked Ethan up and brought him back to the hospital, caring for both my mother and my son. At night, after Ethan was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, working late into the night, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. Sometimes I felt like a machine running non-stop because if I stopped, I was afraid I wouldn't get back up. One night, as I sat by my mother's bedside, she suddenly opened her eyes, looking at me with a gentle but resolute gaze. Brian, she whispered, I know you're hurting, but you have to be strong for Ethan and for yourself. I don't have much time left, but I want you to know I'm always proud of you. I held her hand, tears welling up. Mom, don't say that. You'll get better, I promise I'll take care of you. But deep down, I knew she was fading day by day. I only prayed she'd have the strength to pull through so I could make up for the years she'd sacrificed for me. Ethan, in his innocent way, seemed to sense the fragility of the situation. One evening, as I read to him in the hospital waiting room, he suddenly hugged me. Dad, I don't want Grandma to go anywhere, and I don't want you to be sad. His words were another knife to my heart, but they also gave me the strength to keep going. I hugged him tightly, whispering, I won't be sad, buddy. I have you and Grandma, and that's enough. But reality wasn't as simple as the words I said to my son. The hospital bills kept piling up, and the money I earned couldn't keep up. I started thinking about selling the old car, the most valuable asset I had left. I had no idea where Emily was, and I hadn't heard from her except for the divorce papers her lawyer sent through the mail. The papers demanded we split the house, the one I'd poured years of sweat and tears into paying off. I read the document over and over, feeling like everything I'd built was crumbling piece by piece. But I had no time to sink into despair. My mother needed me, Ethan needed me, and I had to stand tall, if only for them. My mother's final days passed like a dream I didn't want to wake from. I sat by her bedside, holding her hand, listening to her faint breaths blending with the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Each time she opened her eyes, she looked at me with love, as if wanting to say something but lacking the strength. One morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the hospital window, my mother called my name. Her voice was so weak I had to lean close to hear. Brian, you have to promise me, take good care of Ethan. And you, don't let your heart grow heavy. I love you. I nodded, tears streaming down my face, stifling sobs so she wouldn't worry. But a few hours later, she took her last breath. I sat there, holding her hand, feeling as if the world had shattered. The woman who had sacrificed her entire life for me, the one I'd tried so hard to care for, was gone forever. The next day, I forced myself to push through the grief to arrange her funeral. Emily didn't show up, nor did any of her family. I wasn't surprised, but their absence still stung. That day, only a few distant relatives from my side and some neighbors from Decatur came to pay their respects. They shared stories about my mother, about a kind, generous woman who always had a warm smile for anyone in need. Ethan stood beside me, clutching my hand, his eyes red but tearless. Dad, where did Grandma go? He asked, his voice trembling. I knelt down and hugged him. Grandma went to a beautiful place, buddy, but she's always here in our hearts. The funeral was simple, held in our hometown of Decatur, just as my mother had wanted. After the relatives and guests left, I stood before her small grave, staring at the headstone with her name, my heart heavy. I wondered if I'd done enough, if I'd cared for her as well as she deserved. Then I broke down, my emotions bursting like a water balloon. All the feelings I'd suppressed over the past days came flooding out. Ethan, standing nearby, started crying too. I held him, and together we said goodbye to her through our tears. A few days after the funeral, while I was cleaning out my mother's house in Decatur, a middle-aged man in a neat suit knocked on the door. He introduced himself as Harold Thompson, my mother's lawyer. I was surprised, as I had no idea she'd hired one. He asked me to sit down, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a stack of documents. "Brian, your mother, Margaret, left a will. She wanted me to meet you after her passing to go over it." I sat there, my mind still clouded with grief, unsure what to expect. Mr. Thompson began reading, his voice calm and clear. "First, Margaret left a life insurance policy worth $500,000, with the beneficiary being her son, Brian Cranston." I was stunned, my heart pounding. My mother had never mentioned this policy. I knew she'd always lived frugally, but I never imagined she'd quietly prepared such a significant gift for me and Ethan. "This is what your mother wanted," Mr. Thompson said, his eyes kind. "She said it was the greatest gift she could leave for you and your son." Next, he mentioned the small house we were sitting in. The Cranston family home, valued at approximately $150,000, will be transferred to her son, Brian Cranston, he said. "Margaret wanted you to decide whether to keep it or sell it, depending on your and your son's needs." I nodded, feeling like I was in a dream. The house wasn't just property. It held my childhood, memories of my parents, evenings by the fireplace listening to my mother's stories. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but knowing she'd planned so far ahead warmed my heart. Then Mr. Thompson paused, adjusting his glasses. "One more thing, Brian. This is the final part of the will." He handed me a set of documents containing information about a stock portfolio. 20 years ago, your father, Thomas, invested in a small tech company. Your mother held on to those stocks all these years. Now they belong to you. I took the documents, my hands trembling, unsure what this meant. Stocks? But Mom never mentioned anything about this. "How much are they worth?" I asked, my voice faltering with shock. Mr. Thompson gave a small smile. "I'm not certain. I'd recommend consulting a financial advisor to check their current value." He gathered his papers, shook my hand, and left, leaving me sitting there, my mind reeling. That evening, after Ethan was asleep, I opened my laptop, my heart racing as I looked up the company my father had invested in. It was a small tech firm 20 years ago, but now it was a giant in the market. I entered the stock code, and when the number appeared, I could hardly breathe. The current value of the stocks was over $5 million. I sank into the chair, tears streaming down my face, not because of the money, but because of the love my parents had for me. My father, a man who worked his whole life in a small factory, had quietly placed his faith in an investment with an uncertain future. And my mother, who scrimped and saved to raise me, had kept those stocks as a secret, a priceless gift for my and Ethan's future. I was heartbroken that she was gone, that I'd never have the chance to thank her or hug her again. But I was also filled with a bittersweet joy, knowing my parents had planned so far ahead for me and Ethan, even when they weren't sure of the gift's value. I looked out the window where the sunlight fell on the blazing red maple trees. I thought of Ethan, sleeping peacefully in his room, and I knew this gift wasn't just for me. It was for my son's future. My mother had spoken of a worthy gift, and now I understood what she meant. It wasn't just money. It was love, sacrifice, and the faith my parents had in me. But deep inside, I still felt an emptiness that couldn't be filled. My mother was gone, and no matter how great her gift, I only wanted to hear her voice one more time, to see her smile once again. A few days later, I returned to Springfield with Ethan, stepping into a house now occupied by just the two of us. The divorce papers from Emily's lawyer still sat on the kitchen table, a stark reminder of what had shattered. I read them again, each cold, formal line like salt in an open wound. She demanded half of the house, the one I'd poured 7 years of sweat and tears into paying off, the one Ethan and I called home. But I wasn't angry at Emily anymore. I was just tired, and above all, I wanted to close this chapter and start anew for Ethan and for myself. I contacted a lawyer, Richard, a calm middle-aged man, to handle the divorce proceedings. I decided to use the $500,000 life insurance money from my mother to buy out Emily's share of the house. It was where Ethan grew up, where he played basketball in the backyard and drew dinosaurs on his bedroom walls. I couldn't let it go. I asked Richard to negotiate with Emily's lawyer. The deal was $500,000 for her share, and in return, Ethan and I would fully own the house. Emily agreed without even asking where the money came from. She didn't inquire about Ethan, my mother, or even acknowledge my mother's funeral. Her silence hurt, but it also strengthened my resolve. I was determined to gain custody of Ethan, not just because I was his father, but because he deserved someone who truly loved and cared for him. The divorce hearing took place on a spring morning, when the sunlight began melting the last traces of ice on Springfield's streets. I stood before the court, with Ethan sitting in the back row alongside his teacher, his eyes looking at me with trust. Emily appeared dressed impeccably in an expensive dress I knew she'd bought with the money she'd taken from our joint account. She didn't look at me or Ethan, just sat there with a cold, detached expression, as if this were merely an inconvenient formality. The judge, a stern but fair woman, reviewed our case. I explained that Emily had left, had no contact with Ethan, and hadn't contributed to his care in recent months. My lawyer presented evidence of her draining our joint account, leaving Ethan and me in financial hardship. Emily didn't contest, just bowed her head, her lips pressed tightly together. The judge nodded, her voice clear. Based on the evidence and documentation, the court awards custody of Ethan to Brian. Regarding assets, the house will belong to Brian after he completes the buyout of Emily's share. As part of the process, the judge required a disclosure of my current assets to ensure transparency. Richard stood, his voice calm but firm. Brian's assets include the house in Springfield, valued at approximately $800,000 after mortgage payments. The house in Decatur, valued at $150,000, a life insurance policy from his mother worth $500,000, and a portfolio of inherited stocks currently valued at over $5 million. The mention of $5 million silenced the courtroom. I heard a sharp intake of breath from Emily's direction. I glanced at her, catching her eyes, no longer cold but wide with shock and greed. She stared at me, then at the judge, as if unable to believe what she'd heard. $5 million. The number seemed to stun her, twisting her sharp features with an emotion I knew all too well. Greed. When the hearing ended, Emily rushed toward me outside the courtroom. She grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face, her voice trembling. "Brian, you didn't tell me about that money. Please, can we talk again?" I was wrong. I shouldn't have left. For Ethan's sake, can we start over? She was crying, but her eyes weren't on Ethan or me. They were fixed on the $5 million. I pulled my hand away, looking straight into her eyes, my voice cold but steady. "There's nothing left to say, Emily. You made your choice." As I spoke, Emily dropped to her knees and hugged Ethan. "Sweetie, tell your dad to let me come back. We can be a happy family again." I gently pulled her hands off Ethan, my voice firm. "Don't go too far, Emily. He's been through enough of your selfishness and indifference." Then I took Ethan's hand and walked away, not looking back, though her sobs echoed behind me. The spring sunlight shone brightly on Ethan's face, and I saw his first smile in months. "Dad, can we get ice cream?" he asked, his voice clear and bright. I smiled and nodded. "Sure, buddy. Today's a special day." In the months that followed, Ethan and I started over. I kept the house in Springfield where our happiest memories lived. The house in Decatur I decided to renovate and turn into a weekend retreat, a place where Ethan could run around and hear stories about his grandmother. The insurance money and stocks allowed me to pay off debts, set up a college fund for Ethan, and quit my overtime job to spend more time with him. I didn't become extravagantly wealthy. I was still Brian, the simple man who liked brewing coffee each morning and reading dinosaur books with Ethan. But the weight on my shoulders was gone. I enrolled Ethan in basketball classes, and every weekend I stood by the court cheering him on, my heart swelling with joy at his radiant smile. I also joined a volunteer group in Springfield, helping elderly people living alone, as a way to honor my mother who taught me about devotion and love. My story isn't about the unexpected wealth or getting back at Emily. It's about family, sacrifice, and standing firm through life's storms. I learned that true love isn't found in flashy things but in simple moments, like Ethan's hugs or my mother's proud gaze. I want Ethan to grow up with that lesson, that kindness and responsibility will always lead you to the light, even when the path ahead is dark. Today, as Ethan and I play basketball in the backyard under the sunset, I feel at peace. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours, mine, Ethan's, and the legacy of values my mother left behind. And that's enough.